Thanks very much. It's great to be in Kyiv. Obviously, it's tough to be the last person between you and the party, so I'll try and give you the TEDx version, maybe. When they invited me to come to Kyiv, it was very interesting for me to come because there's actually a lot of great things coming out of Kyiv and Ukraine in terms of ICOs and crypto, and even with wearing my CryptoCoin.news media hat, the 2/3 of my founders moved to Kyiv about 6 months ago. And I said, why on earth are you going to Ukraine? And they said, well, don't you realize that it's a great place to build a company? And so I was like, okay, well then this is great because I'm going to come and learn about Kyiv and Ukraine as well. And they said, well, it's good people, you know, they're very talented, and it's a great place to build a business. And obviously, you know, I guess from where you are, it's the center of the world, and equally from here, it's close to the Middle East. It's, you know, you're very well connected, and, you know, it's certainly been working out well. So it's been interesting to come for personal reasons, and then also to meet a lot of the people through the day. So it's good. They asked me to speak about blockchain technology and some of the challenges going forwards, which obviously is interesting, tricky, because, you know, I think we have a rough idea, but it's hard to exactly predict things. And as we spoke about this morning, it's a fast-moving area. I advised my first ICO in about August or September of last year, and that feels like a very long time ago. And we reviewed a book called How to ICO in Singapore by Malcolm Tan that was written about August of last year. And even reading it now, it feels like you're reading a historical document because things are moving so fast. And the regulation talk is great because it illustrates. ICOs will ask, where do we go to set up? And there's no one place that's the best in this part of the world or anywhere. There are pros and cons. And this makes it very interesting that, like with what Belarus are doing, what Ukraine are doing, Gibraltar, Malta, they're not going to get all the business. They do some things, but they can't do everything. Same with Luxembourg. So it's an open space, and I guess that makes very interesting times. Yep, here we are. This is just what I'm going to put the slides up on SlideShare afterwards, so that then anything that I reference or things you can pick up afterwards. So I'll share it with the event hashtag, and then also it means that other people who weren't here can see where it was that the event took place. That's me. That's Irish Tech News and CryptoCoin.news. At the very end, I have the URLs for how to find out more about them. And again, we're always happy to pitch people, so drop us a line, and hopefully we can do a story on you. It's exciting times. As we've been talking about, things are changing. But obviously they wanted me to talk a little bit about the challenges as well. So here's one of the things that, you know, and so with Bobby Lee this morning and many others, they talk about that fiat loses value. So therefore, potentially, and so, you know, with Satoshi Nakamoto and the developing of the concept 10 years ago with the decentralized based currencies, is because it felt that it could give more value to the people that held the currencies, that you wouldn't have this default loss in the value of what you hold. So overall, I get that, and conceptually, I think it's probably true. As we all know, when things got bubbly before Christmas, and even say back to maybe last August when Bitcoin was going up 1,000 a month, and then by Christmas, just into the new year, the value of Ether fell by 2/3 from, well, between 1,400 and 1,000 down to about 350. You know, this isn't normal to turn on your computer in the morning and see that the currency's gone up by 8 or 10% from the night before. So, you know, while there are many things that blockchain and crypto do well, we still have this volatility. And, you know, I know several people that ran ICO campaigns and, you know, had great difficulty because some people were buying when Ether was worth 250 and then others were buying at 800. And so which did they do? Did they drop the value of the token, or did, you know, how did they work with a currency that people were using to buy their tokens that was changing so rapidly? So as we've said, if Kickstarter and Indiegogo were the crowdfunding of the early days, even last year's ICOs would take us to a very different place now. With the regulators, and again, this morning we touched on this a little bit, that it's much harder now. So I guess I'll say it again, but ICOs, some ICOs complained that last year all they had to do was throw up a white paper and a little 30-second video and they'd raise 30 million. And they lament to me now that they just can't do that anymore. And I'm like, well, that's actually a good thing, because you know, if you're a scam, you shouldn't be doing this. If you don't have a product and a team, you shouldn't be doing this. And if you actually are doing this for the right reason, and it is something that can be tokenized, yes, you're going to have to do the KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering, and the whitelisting. But these are good things, because these are actually going to future-proof the money that you're gathering in and your ability to do things with it. So you could say it's harder, but while it's harder, at the same time, more funds have been raised in this quarter, the first quarter of this year, than the whole of last year. We get a weekly report from ICO Bench, and the net funds raised are up. So therefore, you can say it's more difficult, but at the same time, it's not difficult if you do it well. And again, it might seem that an ICO campaign lasts 6 weeks to 3 months, but actually a really good one has been planning it for a long time before. And if you're not doing that, then you are facing a serious challenge. And so in terms of advising some ICOs, they will show me this insane timeline where they're like, right, we're doing a pre-ICO for a week, and then a day later we're doing the full ICO, and 4 weeks later we'll have raised 30 million. And you're just like, I don't know where you're basing that on, but there's going to be a lot of pain or unrealistic expectations that you're going to have to deal with if you're going to do this well. So the regulation, I guess the great thing is this has been covered in a lot of detail just before. So it's good to listen to it. It's very interesting. See, and so like say with the UK and Ireland, I'll be talking to them in Ireland and the UK and saying, why are we seeing nothing from you? Are you guys doing nothing? And you know, we're asking it slightly provocatively, because they will say, no, we're completely aware of it, but we're kind of watching and waiting to work out what the best response is to this. And it's an interesting one. You know, if you go in too hard, then you destroy initiative and people move to other places, and everybody wants the business to be based where they are. At the same time, we were in Estonia last September, and the president was saying, you know, we want to encourage e-citizenship, but at the same time, we do offer health and education, and we want to find a way to be able to tax in some way, which, I mean, you know, I guess we all hate paying tax, but on the other hand, wherever we live, when tax is used well, it provides services that make where we live a nice place to live. And, you know, in Ireland, you've had that in the other way, where many large multinationals have availed of the services but haven't really paid the right level of tax. So therefore, you know, I can see why regulation's coming. I can see that it can also protect investors. This, I guess, if you talk about challenges, the guys who are doing this well are future-proofing the way they've gathered money, and they're maybe requiring a higher level of documentation and validation than is necessary, but it means that future down the road they won't have to give the money back because they've taken good steps. So it's a challenge, but I think with all these things, you know, if you prepare and do things well, then you'll be more successful. And yes, that takes more time, but then overall, you can still be raising funds in well under a quarter of a year, where before it might have taken several years. So it's a challenge, but I think it's a good challenge. Yeah, so here's the thing, right? So if you had to say what makes for a good ICO, a good campaign, you're going to talk about good product, good team. You know, there are about 4 of these key criteria that you have to have, but then marketing is actually, I guess I work with a lot of people who are very smart tech guys, but they feel that communicating about what they do is not important. But unfortunately, at the same time, I've often seen 4 or 5 other people doing the same idea, but a couple of them are communicating it far better. And therefore, the marketing side is as important, because you've got to be good in the first place, but once you're good, that only takes you into the top 10% or top 20%. So how do you get above your rivals who are still with you out in front? Well, it's by when you pull your guys out on stage, can they articulate what you do, and can they get out there and listen to what investors want to know about, rather than just tell them about how it's a really complicated product they've created that solves an interesting problem. With that, where do you communicate and how do you build your community? So often, at the moment, that's Telegram. And then the thing about Telegram is it still takes a while to build good products. But in Telegram, the expectation is in near real time, great, I bought my token, when am I going to be rich, and why haven't you built the product? And therefore, there's actually a whole skill and an art to, on one hand, telling the story well and communicating, but then on the other hand, managing expectations. One of the ICOs I worked with called ClearPoll did really well, built a great product, but had to spend a lot of time explaining to people that just because they raise the money and hit the hard cap, it still takes a while, to get your app registered on the Apple Store, to build it, test it, do a beta, and improve it. And so it might seem a softer element of what you have to do, but if you're smart and you do manage the communication side, you'll build a community that then are advocates for you. And then when someone else starts getting a bit negative, it doesn't have to just be you that's on message, because your community understand what you're trying to do. So this is a challenge, and it's a challenge for some people that maybe want to just stay in front of the computer and not speak to people. But you're going to have people that are willing to get out and talk to people too, because you're still people selling to people, even though it's a distributed, decentralized currency. So I put this up because when you're looking to grab your funds, try and work out. So I was talking to one of the ICOs in the break, and they were saying, where should we go to pitch what we do? And I'm like, well, what is the data telling you about what you do at the moment? Which part of the world is interested in what you do, either by geography or sector? And use that information to double down on that and go for more in that area, because everyone, several Ukrainian-based ICOs have just been on tour to Asia because they are finding traction in Asia. So they went to China, Singapore, Japan, and other related countries. But that's because they worked out that it was a good market fit with what they were trying to do. And so there was a question earlier today about, should you just advertise in English? And I kind of thought, well, that's an insane question, because that really depends on who likes what you do, where are your investors from. If your investors are all from Korea, then I would think that would be crazy to just advertise in English. But maybe it's another one where your investors are all geographically specific to where you are. And that's specific to everybody, but you should really know that. If you don't know where the interest is coming from, then you're making it much harder on yourselves because you can't be everywhere. And then even some people, in terms of challenges, have been unsuccessful because they went on the road for too long and in the wrong places. So yes, they were out and they were gone for 4 weeks and they spent a lot of money and they met a lot of people, but they were the wrong people in the wrong parts of the world. So, these are things that you really need to think through before you just dash off to New York. If New York is right, great, but if it's not right for your market, then leave it be, because there's so many of these events on that you can curate much more carefully about what is right for you. So I guess also as a challenge, this is quite good as a real proof of concept, because if you can't raise private funding before you even go to a pre-ICO, then I would really wonder how much traction what you're trying to do is. And again, not everything needs to be tokenized. Not everything needs you to create your own token for what you do. And these are hard questions to ask, because obviously, some people go, we have to go now, because if we don't go now, regulation will come in and it'll be much harder to raise the funds. But maybe this isn't necessarily right for you. And seed funds will both give you some time to do this and also give you some validation of whether you're actually doing something that is appropriate for this method of funding or not. Okay, anyone recognize this guy? Sorry?
Yes, the one who wants to eat something.
Oh, very good. So John McAfee, and you can look up what he's saying because we won't mention that here. So I have him up as an interesting example, because he he's a smart guy, and he communicates very well and is very passionate about why cryptocurrencies have a place and have a value. At the same time, sometimes he can be his own worst enemy as well. So I put it up there that to be able to communicate is a great skill. And even if that means standing in front of the bathroom mirror and talking for a while, it might seem weird and silly, but then it means that when you come out, you can engage with people more, and people can get your story and kind of hear what the key thing is. At the same time, if you start taking $100,000 to promote a particular one, then obviously, was it Warren Buffett said, you have a great reputation for 25 years and you can destroy it in 2 minutes. So I like him, he's interesting, but at the same time, he also personifies communicate well, but think about what it is that you want to communicate. The last time we saw him, he had 2 machine guns and a dog, so, Right. When they were talking about challenges, without going too deep here, I think the last stats I saw were like 85% of tokens were being launched on the Ethereum platform, ERC20. But, is that necessarily the right one for you? I know other guys, Spotcoin, who are launching, I think it's on the Neo platform. So have a think about what's right for you. The thing is it's kind of interesting that we're still in such an embryonic state that there are technical challenges. You could do a pros and cons of Bitcoin, Ether, Ethereum, and the things that work, and can they have a successful solution to sharding? And then I met a guy who is still a member of the Bitcoin Foundation and contributing code, and I was like, why are you doing that? Can it fix all the issues that have been listed? And he said, well, I believe it can, and a bit like Linux, I'm giving my time for free to keep building the platform because I think some of the solutions can be fixed and it could be the better solution than some of the others. And so I guess I'm just saying, don't go where the herd is just because everyone else happens to be launching an ERC20 token. It might not be right for your technical needs, and it can be something that is worth some time and is worth diving in deeply for a while to make sure that it's the right technology for you guys to use. This is a challenge. And also, so we were at a conference in Dubai, and they said, right, so is blockchain going to change everything? Is this, before and after blockchain? And I said, well, in theory, though, blockchain was a proof of concept 10 years ago. Then you had Ethereum, then you have Hyperledger, or you have Hashgraph and things. So, things are not standing still, and things are moving very quickly. And I would just say, as a challenge, it's important to think about, have an eye open to what's out there, and really think hard before you just jump on a platform because everyone else happens to be there. Because some of them do really interesting things, and they might be a better fit for you than just what the neighbors are doing. I guess with people, the thing is to take it to the opposite extreme. Somebody said, don't work with arseholes. And so the thing is that, I like this space because you get to meet a lot of very intelligent people who are doing interesting things, and they don't always know what the right answer is. And, even as an advisor, I might put up 3 solutions and we'll kick around what the best one is. So the thing is, if you have somebody who you can work with, who you have a bit of give and take, and you can be able to discuss and not always agree, but still work out what a good solution is, that's going to be a lot. Because, basically in this area, we're almost like in, micro startups on steroids. We work with small teams quickly to grow things fast. So the people in your team are either super important, or if you get somebody that you can't work with, the time it takes to get them out again can be so long and disruptive that by then you may have missed the opportunity. So if you can do anything to work out, are these people I can work with, then it's time well spent, because then you're not having to fix human problems later. So even I've got dolphins, but dolphins go around in gangs and beat up other dolphins too, so they might not be the right dolphins. So even check which. So this is because I'll put it up on SlideShare. This is a cross section of some ones that are doing interesting things. Binero in there is a Ukrainian one, so there are some from this part of the world as well. And I just keep updating it with ones that are trying to do different things that look interesting and maybe in innovative ways. So that's the thank you. The last slide beyond this one is the contact details if you want to get in touch, find out anything, or let me know more about what you're doing. So this means that we've done it to a kind of TEDx length. I can do questions, or maybe you all want to rush off to the party. So I'm open to either. So everyone's like, yes, I want to drink. So look, it's lovely to be here, and I'm happy to speak to everyone afterwards, so let's do it in a more sociable way. So thank you very much, and have a nice evening.